Hello everyone! In this video, we will see how we can add colors to a material using the height information that we created in the previous episode. Before we dive into it, I'd like to touch on a few concepts regarding PBR materials. If you're not familiar with what PBR is, it stands for Physically Based Rendering. You can think of it as a set of guidelines that aim at accurately representing how objects react to light. As a matter of fact, materials in real life follow certain rules, and we, as 3D artists, are trying to account for these rules to avoid inconsistencies. We won't really delve into that topic in this video, but if you want to learn more about it, Wes McDermott wrote a thorough introduction to PBR that can really help grasping the core concepts as well as the science behind it. So if you want to check it out, I'll put the link in the description box below. Now, the reason I mention PBR now is because some of these guidelines are about the base color. Color in general is a complex topic, but it can be even more so if you come from a 2D background, where you sometimes use color to convey information that do not normally belong to it, such as shadows and reflections. But in 3D texturing, these information are driven by specific maps that are not related to color. For example, occlusion is handled by the ambient occlusion map, and so you do not need to make your base color darker in these areas. It means that the base color of your material should be devoid of shadows or lighting information, giving it this sort of flat look that you see here. Another important rule to keep in mind is to avoid extremely light or extremely dark values, as no material in real life is purely black or white. We'll see how we can check these values later. Alright, let's set that aside for now and start building our base color map. So we are finally leaving behind us this big chunk of the graph that makes up the height, and hopefully you now understand why I called it the backbone of our material. So let's take that space up here. Now, where do we start? Your first impulse might be to search for color and see what shows up, so let's do that. Color. And you see that it filters out a lot of nodes. Basically, most of the grayscale nodes that we encountered so far have a color twin that you can find here. But let's start with something simple. We're going to click on that familiar bucket icon, the uniform color. Now, we already know how this one works. Just pick a color from the gradient here or play with the HSV sliders. If you have a specific color you want to use, you can also type in the hex code here. Now, in my case, I have a reference image that I would like to follow. I have it pinned in my PureRef board, and with the uniform color selected, I can click on the eyedropper and sample any pixel on my screen. Now, if I want to capture that general green hue, I need to find an area that is not too light nor too dark, something pretty neutral, like this, for example. Okay. Now let's say we want to test that green on our fabric. The problem is we don't have any color input in our base material. And that's because when we created this little setup here, we wanted to focus on the height. And so we kept the default gray that comes with the node. If we want to enable a custom input for that, we need to scroll down to the User Maps tab and switch the base color from false to true. And it turns everything black because right now the color input is empty. So let's plug our green here. All right, so this is how you add a color to your material. Obviously, this is quite limited. We're only inputting one solid color, so it feels very uniform and basic. To add variety and details to this base, we need to talk about blending colors. So far, we've only been blending grayscale nodes, and it was fairly straightforward because we could take any of these nodes and just blend them together without thinking too much about it. So, how can we approach it when it comes to color? Let's make a blend and put that first green in the background. Since we have a yellow connection coming in here, it means the foreground is also going to expect color. So let's duplicate this color, give it a different hue. All right. And we are now blending these two greens, and sure, we can play with the opacity or the blending modes, but in the end, we're only getting a uniform result because, well, we blend two uniform inputs. The only way to add variations is to use that mask input here. And since this one is always grayscale, we can use pretty much anything. So if I take a random grunge map, let's go for galvanic large, and let's make this lighter. Well, you see that the grayscale information that I have here is now driving the distribution of the colors here. So that's one of the main ways to build up details in your color map. Just blend two color inputs and use a grayscale mask to break that down. And to get something complex and intricate, you would of course have to repeat that operations as many times as necessary, just layering color upon color. You get the idea. This method has its pros and cons, but it can be a bit tedious. So I'd like to show you another technique to quickly get a complex color map. This time we're going to start from a grayscale input. And I'd like to reuse something from our height because we put a lot of effort into it. We could take the final height map directly. There's a fair amount of details in there. We have the warp, the weft, the ornaments, the trim, each with its own set of grayscale values, so there's a lot of information to build upon. That could work, but Designer actually ships with filters that help you extract even more information from your height map. So there's one in particular that I love, and it's the curvature node. You have two versions of it, but I find the curvature smooth a bit easier to work with. So let's bring it in. Now this node is a bit special because you see that it actually expects normal information. So let's fetch our normal. I'm going to take this one here because I don't want the folds to have an impact on the color. Okay, looks like we have a problem here. Everything is kind of drawn in that vertical gradient. And this is something that you might encounter more than once when using this node in Designer. So I'd like to quickly show you how to fix this. I won't get into the technical details here, but the reason it's doing that is because the curvature smooth samples each pixel from the normal here, using a downscaled version of it. And when for some reason the node doesn't tile properly, then the interpolation breaks. So to troubleshoot this issue, you need to look for a node that doesn't tile. And see, this is where it's important to have a few notions about inheritance. Because our curvature smooth here has its styling set to relative to input, it means the problem must come from somewhere upstream. So not here, not here, and okay, I think I know what caused it. So we have this last blend for our height, and you now know that it takes its base parameters from the primary input, that is the background here. And if we trace this back, we see that, indeed, we have this transform in which we had removed the vertical tiling. And this new parameter then propagates to this node, which passes it to this node until it finally breaks our curvature smooth here. To prevent that, we have two options. The first one is ridiculously simple. See, for some reason, I had plugged the gemstones in the background of the blend. And since the blend is set to max and has full opacity, the order of the inputs does not matter. The blend is commutative. So I can simply swap them by selecting them, then press X, and boom, our curvature is fixed because the blend now takes its styling from here and not from here. If for some reason you can't invert this order, you can simply fix the problem by directly overriding the inheritance and setting the node back to absolute. You can do it here or directly in the curvature node itself. So again, if you ever encounter this weird behavior, make sure your node is set to full tiling. This problem should be fixed in the coming versions of Designer, so stay tuned. Now, if we zoom in on the curvature, you see that it outputs this gorgeous grayscale map that highlights all the edges and cavities of our height. And I'd like to use that as a base for my color. I can do that in just a few clicks with a very powerful node, the gradient map. You see that this node is a bit special because it takes a grayscale input, but outputs color. So you can think of it as some sort of converter node. It comes with this default grayscale ramp, and if you click on the gradient editor here, it opens up a separate window in which you can do a lot of things. So let's take a moment to explore it. First, you have this ramp here, and if you click on it, it will place two keys at each end, which you can move and adjust as you want. And you see that by doing so, the node is essentially remapping my grayscale values to the colors that I'm picking up. Now you can of course add more keys, move them around, invert their position or color. You can also change the type of interpolation, which can be very handy, especially if you want to have a hard set of colors, like that. Okay, but what's awesome about this node is that you can sample gradients from anywhere on your screen. Let me show you. I'm going to grab my reference again and simply drag a line like that. Now, if you cover a lot of space, the result can be quite noisy and give you too many keys. You can balance it by playing with the precision slider, or simply by removing keys manually, just dragging them upwards like so. So I'm going to try that a few times until I have something that is detailed enough, but not too crazy. All right, I think this is good. So this is how you can create a complex color map out of a grayscale input. Really powerful technique. This is a node that you'll find yourself using a lot. Now, if I want to soften it a little, I could blend it with the uniform green that we've kept here and just play with the opacity. That's up to you. I'm gonna keep this just in case. Then last but not least, I'd like to add a little bit of randomness in the color, so that things look more natural and less regular. To do so, I'm going to take a node that has lots of randomness options, the tile generator. This time, we're going to go with the tile generator color. All right, let's start with a bell shape, something soft. Increase the amount to 200. Then scroll down to the color section. Here I'm going to max out the saturation and then randomize the hue. It's giving me this nice random noise. I can play with the main color. And let's now adjust the size parameters a little. Gonna increase the scale, then reduce the Y. Okay, no need to spend too much time on this because the final result is going to be very subtle. I just wanted to have a nice random color base. Now to blend it better with the fabric weave, I'm going to warp it using a directional warp. And for the intensity input, I can simply reuse the curvature because it has all the information I need. I'm just going to blur it a bit so that it's not too noisy. Then do a quick level pass to get some contrast back. There we go. Now let's take this very colorful output and blend it with our green fabric. The key here is to find the right blending mode. I'm gonna go with soft light. It works a little like overlay, but with smoother transitions. And now let's drop the opacity to a very low value, somewhere around 0.1. It should be very subtle, like that. If I compare before and after, you see that it's definitely adding depth and variety to our green base. I really like it. Now, if I wanted the effect to be even more subtle, I could add a noise in the mask input. Actually, let me try it with something directional like an isotropic noise. Like that. Okay, again, it's very discreet, but it adds an extra layer of complexity. I think we can call the fabric color done, so let's frame this. Fabric color. And now let's tackle the trim and gemstones. Here, the best approach would be to assemble their colors in a separate group of nodes, then blend the result with the green fabric when it's done. So let's start with the golden base. Now, when creating gold, or any metal for that matter, you need to keep in mind that the color is one thing and the metalness is another. So even though gold in real life can look like it has a very warm or dark hue, the actual color is in fact pretty light. And if you don't want to eyeball it, the best is to find a good chart online, such as this one that I'm going to use. And you see, it just gives me straight away the accurate values for gold. So I'm just going to take a uniform color and sample this. All right. Now let's blend this with another color. I'm going to duplicate this one and go for a bright red. This is going to be the color of our gems, so feel free to choose whatever you prefer. And now to distribute these two colors, we're going to need a mask that tells what goes where. Since the red is on top, we need a mask that tells where are the gemstones. And it seems we already have that, so let's take a dot node, gemstones. Here we go. Now it's hard to tell how it looks because right now we only see the color itself. We don't see it in context. Let's add a blend here. And here we need another mask that will include both the trim and the radial ornaments. And we actually don't have that right now, so let me just make one quickly. We need a mask that takes the assembled ornaments, so both the gems and the mountings. And to get that result quickly, I can simply take this assembled result here and run a threshold like that. Then I'd like to add the trim to it. So blend, trim, max mode. Okay. Let's save that in a dot. Call it trim and ornaments. And we can now use that mask to drive the final blend here. Okay, Now it's working really well for the trim, but not so much for the gemstones. Can you guess what's wrong here? It looks like the mask that controls the red is too large. Let's navigate back to where we created it. And okay, we have this threshold that needs to be adjusted. So let's increase it until the red nicely fits within the gems. Perfect. We can also check how things look in 4K. All right, everything stays in place. Awesome. So it looks like we are done with the base color. Let's frame this second group. Call it ornaments. And you could, of course, refine all this and layer in more details and subtle variations. For example, for this bit, I decided to go for solid uniform colors because the height is stronger in this area and so it doesn't need extra details in my opinion. But of course, feel free to polish it further. Now, before we wrap up this video, I'd like to show you one last trick. Remember when I told you that the base color had to follow certain rules in PBR workflows? Well, one of them was to stay within a certain value range, so nothing too dark or nothing too bright. Design a shapes with a little tool that checks these values for you. It's called the PBR Validate node. The way it works is super simple. Just plug your base color, and if it returns green, you're good to go. Now, if I were to add dark values and test it, well, you see that I now have these red spots telling me that my base color is not PBR compliant. Now, these are not hard set rules. You can get away with a little red, but overall, it's best to keep in the green. Alright, so this concludes our exploration of base color in Substance Designer. We saw how to colorize grayscale information either by blending colors and using grayscale as a mask, or by remapping grayscale to color using the gradient map node. In the next video, we will cover the roughness and metallic maps.